So, what happens when a political party dreams up this incredible high tech future, but, well, forgets to bring a calculator? Today, we're going to dive into a really sharp analysis of a new political manifesto. According to the source we're looking at, it's less of a plan and more of a multi-billion-dollar wish list. And this quote right here, it really just sums up the whole argument from the source material. The idea is that this manifesto is packed with ambition, but it's completely disconnected from, economic reality. So let's dig into what they mean. And we're going to start with something you might not expect, a simple but pretty revealing technical flaw.
Yeah, believe it or not, the first big point the source makes has absolutely nothing to do with policy. It's all about the manifesto document itself. The critique starts before you even get to page 1.
Okay, so the big promise, the central vision, is for a smart Bangladesh. It's all about a future driven by a huge tech revolution, bringing efficiency and making everything accessible to every single citizen.
But here's where things get a little weird. According to the source, the actual document, and remember, this is just a text PDF, comes in at a massive 112 megabytes. Now, I know if you're not super into tech specs, that number might not mean a whole lot. So let's put that into perspective for you.
A text document like this, it should probably be, maybe 2 megabytes at the most. This thing is more than 50 times bigger than it should be. And the source argues that this isn't just some small oopsie, it's a sign of, technical incompetence. And here's the real kicker. For a party that's promising this amazing digital future, they've basically made their most important document impossible to download for anyone with a slow internet connection or limited data. The very people they say they want to help.
Okay, so from the technical side of things, let's get to the real heart of the critique, the money. This is where the source we're looking at says that Wishlist really disconnects from the calculator. And to break it all down, the analysis uses this phrase, the 10% trap. It sounds simple, but it's a really powerful piece of math that's at the core of their entire financial argument. So here's the trap in a nutshell. The manifesto promises to spend 5% of the entire country's GDP on health and another 5% on education. Simple enough, right? That adds up to 10% of GDP. But here's the problem. The country's total tax revenue, everything it brings in, is actually less than 10% of GDP. So according to the source, if they just kept those two promises, there would be literally no money left for anything else. Nothing for defense, for the police, for roads, not even enough to pay government workers. It's a huge problem.
On top of that, the manifesto lays out this massive economic goal: grow the economy to $1 trillion by 2034. But to get there, the source points out the economy would need to grow by an incredible 10 to 12% year after year. That's a rate the country has just never seen before. So without a really clear step-by-step roadmap on how to achieve that, the source calls it less of a plan and more of a hallucination. And then you've got all the direct handouts, things like cash for families, unemployment benefits, free tablets for kids. Now, the source makes a really important point here. These aren't like building a bridge where you can take out a loan. These are ongoing costs. They have to be paid for with tax money every single year. And when they looked, they just couldn't find any kind of realistic tax plan in the manifesto that could actually pay for all this. And the analysis doesn't just stop with the budget. It gets even more interesting when it looks at how some of the other promises for things like infrastructure and government reform could actually end up creating more problems than they solve. You see all these big, shiny mega projects listed: bullet trains, underground tunnels, another huge bridge, new airports. They sound amazing, right? But the source asks some pretty basic questions. Where are the studies to see if these are even possible? And the big one, how on earth are you going to pay for all this when the country is already dealing with a lot of foreign debt from the projects it already has? And of course, there's a promise you see in just about every political platform ever. We're going to cut red tape, make government more efficient. It always sounds great, but the question is, how do they actually plan to do it? Well, this is where the source points out a massive contradiction. Right after promising to cut red tape, the manifesto proposes creating a whole bunch of new bureaucracy. We're talking about a new 100-member upper house in parliament, plus a whole list of new commissions for everything from the media to the economy. The source's take? Instead of speeding things up, this would probably just grind everything to a halt. The analysis also highlights what look like major policy clashes. For instance, on one hand, the manifesto promises to give businesses tax holidays, which means less money for the government. But on the other hand, it promises to control food prices, which means more spending by the government. The source just asks a simple question: how can you possibly do both at the same time?
Okay, finally, let's talk about the actual wording in the manifesto. The analysis calls it the language of non-commitment. And you'll see why. It's full of phrases that sound really official, like this one. But when you look closely, they don't actually commit to doing anything specific. Or how about this one? Effective initiatives will be launched. I mean, what does effective even mean? And what are these initiatives? The argument from the source is that this kind of language is used on purpose to make it really hard to hold anyone accountable later on.
And this is probably the best example the source points to. It sounds like a clear promise for a pay raise for government workers, right? But that little phrase at the end, in an appropriate time, basically makes the promise meaningless. The source says you can translate that to, "We'd love your vote, but we have no money and no idea when or if we'll ever do this." So when you put it all together, the technical issues, the massive budget holes, the super vague language, the source leaves us with a really important question. How do we, as citizens, learn to spot the difference between a nice-sounding political promise and an actual, credible plan? It's a reminder to always look past the big headlines and ask the tough questions, about the cost, about whether it's even possible. Because according to this analysis, a real plan isn't just about having big dreams, it's about being able to show you've actually done the math.